Hello everyone, with the new Power Pass coming to Lost Ark in July 2025 and the server merge of NA West and NA East in October, there's going to be a lot more new players entering the game. And by new players, I mostly mean Southeast Asian rice farmers and alt accounts. But if you look at my roster, you might call me an RMTing Omega Whale, but believe it or not, I haven't actually spent that much money on the game. Instead, I'm a greedy scumbag busser, making about 1.5 mil a week, not counting like special drops, and I only play basically one roster. So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to bust every raid from Thaemine to Mordum, so you too can ruin the game. So the hardest thing in most low man raids isn't necessarily like very complex mechanics or even the damage check. It's actually like stagger mechanics. So you're going to be referencing this a lot, like stagger builds. And a very universal stagger increase is going to be stagger cards. So Guardian Purification is going to give you 15% stagger if you max it, which is about equivalent to like 600 expertise. And this is going to be on your support. Obviously, you don't want to run expertise, and you should really never have to if you're using the card set and also using a stagger build. Obviously, if you need stagger, you're going to run VPH on supports. Legendary minimum, Relic's going to increase that more, and then having a stone is actually going to increase that even more than Relic. So for artists, in a pretty lenient stagger raid, you can just run 2 overwhelms on your Tiger encounter. Literally just standard build with the rune swap. If you need a lot of stagger, this is my stagger build that I'm running. You drop portal for crane, you put on the stagger tripod. I'm pretty sure this reset does nothing, and I think this one does more stagger with a legendary overwhelm. And then you can go inkwell or sprinkle with the purple overwhelm. I think inkwell is just objectively worse, but you get a little bit more meter even without wealth and the meter gen tripod. But I'd honestly just run sprinkle, to be honest. For Paladin, for an easy stagger raid, you just go overwhelm on your holy sword and 7 yellow, which is probably what most people are playing like as default. If you need a little more than that, you go 2 blue, overwhelms on executor sword and holy sword. And then if you need a lot of stagger, you go 3 blue with the purple overwhelm on punishment. So for Bard, I'm literally making this 2 days before the support change, and Bard kit changes a lot. I'm pretty sure you have Sound Holic default, which is actually a lot of stagger. So yeah, but I'm gonna lose motivation if I wait 2 days, so whatever. For Bard, if you need a little stagger, you go Sound Shock Overwhelm instead of Sonatina. If you need more stagger than that, then you put on the Sound Holic, but like I said, I'm pretty sure you have this default. I guess you just put the Overwhelm on instead of Wealth. And then if you need even more stagger, you can go Note Bundle and like drop DR or something, but you usually don't need this. This does do a lot of stagger though. Let's go purple overwhelm here. So for DPS, obviously clearing the raid is the overall goal, so you can't really sacrifice too much damage, and you're just going to need to figure out where to put your overwhelms. Usually you just run your standard build, but there are 3 classes that have stagger synergies, which are Scrapper, Artillerist, and Destroyer. For Scrapper, it's critical blow, and that increases your party's stagger damage by 20%, and you would drop Death Rattle for this. I don't know anything about the other 2 classes. I'm pretty sure Napalm is either standard or like you can replace it with Napalm freely, and I know literally nothing about Destroyer. But running with one of these 3 classes in a raid that needs stagger is going to make the bust extremely easy, or at least a lot easier. Alright, I'm going to go over every bust specific mechanic in Thaemine to Mordum, and all the things you should know to bust it properly. Most of the sources are from my own videos that I uploaded to my channel, and I'll put those in the description if you want to watch the full run. So for Thaemine Gate 1, you're going to want to save Sidereal or wait for Sidereal for 145 and 55x, the 2 stagger mechanics, and you just throw your Destruction Bomb and then go way in the middle, and that should clear the stagger bar. Or at least it will leave a little bit left if your Destruction Bomb was pretty bad, and then you can stagger that easily. You also need to wait or hold Sidereal for 100x, the special Balthor, because you can't really get the counters. It kind of glitches out in like 2-man, where you get the counter but you don't get the meteor thing. So you just want to use the special Balthor there. And at the beginning of the basement, you want to clear out the eyes so they don't imprison you and pretty much one-shot you. How it works is if you look at the red eye, like your character's looking at it, then the imprison bar builds up. So you want to clear them as soon as possible, but also you can look away, which is something a lot of people don't know. You can actually just look away from the eye and your bar will go down naturally. And then again, you should wait or hold Sidereal for 38 bars and use Balthor there. Clearing this varies by class. So for burst classes, like you would use both of your hypers and then just burst it to 0x, or 0 I guess. Uptime classes, you just break the shield and then use 2 hypers. If you don't manage to kill it, then you have to do the dodging mechanic. It's very important that you don't get grabbed, because if you both get grabbed, it's just a wipe. Alright, now Thaemine Gate 2, easily the worst gate in all buses since Brel hard mode Gate 1, the old Brel. Because you need buyer participation to get the counters, and these buyers are really stupid. So for hard mode, you need all 6 buyers to get the counters, and if one misses, then it's a wipe, and you just get jailed there for like 3 hours. So for the 72x billiards mechanic, the best way we figured out how to do it is to both start at 6, and then go left or right, and then obviously hit the balls in. It's kind of buggy with the rectangle aggro, so you want to wait a little bit before going to the next ball to bait out the rectangle. In hard mode, you can only miss 2, so you really want to line it up and make sure it goes in. If you miss more than 2, then you have to go stagger middle, and it's a very hard stagger check that you aren't like geared for, and you're pretty much just back to counters. After that, at 18 bars, you have to kill the minions. Usually we have the support hyper the second wave, and then the DPS will kill the third wave. You can also save your DPS hyper for this and clear it very easily. You can also actually time stop or use your hyper to avoid the wipe, because it's not an actual wipe, it just does a lot of damage, so you can actually avoid it. So for Gate 3, again, it's pretty much the same. You just need the buyers to help you stagger the sword at the beginning, and then you want to Inanna the sword at 255, so you get a lot more free damage instead of having to dodge. And then at 210, you want to weigh the horse as soon as possible, and also have your support take the clash. With weigh, you should be able to break the shield before the second clash. At stage break, you want to skip first clash so you don't get any of the enhanced special patterns, and then just Nineveh at the clash before 90 bars. It's pretty much the same from here. You just kill it, use your hyper if you have it at last clash. The first ghost will spawn 50 seconds after you see the timer, after clone mechanic. So you should have a good bearing of when that mechanic is going to start. If your DPS is low enough to see second ghost, that one will spawn 90 seconds after the first ghost. So you want to keep an eye on the timer so you don't get surprised by that. For Gate 4 Thaemine, you're going to want to run a stagger comp, so stagger support and probably some overwhelms on your DPS. You also need buyer assistance for the 315x sword staggers, and you're gonna want to put the buyers top, so top left and top right, and then assign like higher stagger and a lower stagger for bottom left, and a higher stagger, lower stagger for bottom right. And then you need to rotate to the top to send the extra swords into the top left and top right. For 280x, that's when the stagger build comes into play. You need to stagger Thaemine with only 4 people, so you build extra stagger for that. You also need Prokel to wait before coming out. Basically after he lands, Prokel will then stagger the sword inside, otherwise it kind of bugs out and like the wall spawns weird. And then for 175x, the fishbone mechanic, you do it differently with only 4 people. And there are 2 variations for that. The plus one, you want to stand above the middle row and try to hit the 5 swords there, and then you have the vertical line going from 12 to 6. And that should leave 2 open, and then you go DR at the bottom. For the X1, you go 11 to 5 and 7 to 1, and you try to hit 3 with the lines. And that'll leave 12 and 6 open, and then again you go DR at the bottom. And then after that, at 87x, you just Shandy and then kill it to 0x and ignore the swords, and use your hyper if you need it.
I didn't even get my hyper.
For 4-2 and 4-3, it's pretty much the same. You just skip the Stagger and clear. Alright, so Echidna is pretty much just re-clear. For 4-man, you should run a little bit of Stagger, so you don't have to send all your damage skills, and bring some worlds if you need. But it's actually just very lenient. If you don't care about the damage, then you just send everything. The counter mechanic is currently bugged after revives, so you need the buyers to either live to help counter or have them DC at the beginning for like 5 minutes. Otherwise, the splits aren't properly like set, and you can have like 4 to 0 and you just wipe infinite. If you have a high damage party, you can actually just Azena plus recast right after the stagger's finished and use your atros and stuff. You also have another window after the counters. You just want to push it to 50x as soon as possible before the cutscene, and if you do it properly, you just skip the entire rest of phase 1 and go straight to basement. If you somehow have low damage, then you have to send one person to solo stagger, and they would just Thar on both staggers on the mini boss. After that, your DPS would use their hypers on the shield since you don't have a Vel, and you just push it to 55. For gate 2, it is quite literally the same as reclear. You just kill the boss, and then you try to hyper both snakes. I'll put a link to the Echidna double snake like hyper lineups, but you literally just kill the boss. For Behemoth, there's really nothing special again. Gate 1, you just need your buyers to AFK at 6, so they take no damage and waste revives. For the tornadoes, just go 3x and then collect clockwise, so you don't miss any. And then at like 8:30, you're gonna wipe because the guardians didn't die, so you just want to revive before like the buyers do. For gate 2, you want to tell your buyers to DC for like 8 to 9 minutes, so again they don't waste revives. After 10 minutes, they do get kicked from the raid, so you want to make sure you tell them 9 minutes, and then if they don't come back, it's just their fault. Again, tornadoes 3x can go clockwise. And then there is like a myth with the safe spot wall. Since you can't do the crystal stagger, you need to find the wall to hide behind. And the myth basically is that the way Behemoth looks before he leaves is going to be where the walls spawn. So they do spawn opposite each other, and I know a lot of people have tried this and it doesn't work for them. But like, I literally did probably 200 Behemoth buses and it worked like 195 times. So I don't know how it works, but this is just how we did it. Yeah. After that, in the last phase, you again want to hold to make sure they all come back, but you just kill it basically. Alright, for Aegir, I'm just going to talk about 2-man normals. Hard mode, 4c4 is literally just reclear, so I'm not going to waste any time talking about that. Pretty much same thing as 3-man, to be honest, as well. You don't have to do anything special, so I'm going to talk about 2-man. For 2-man normal, you're going to want a very, very high stagger comp, which means stagger card support with the highest stagger build possible. You need this for 170x. The support will go solo stagger the 4 clones, and it does actually have a time limit. Also, during this 170x mechanic, you need your DPS to focus on killing the minions. You can't really like AFK outside, because if you don't kill the minions, then the stagger window inside actually expires when there's like too many minions, so you gotta kill them. But actually the stagger build is mostly for the arm at 60x, which is actually a pretty tight stagger window. Your support should T-skill, and then your DPS will use their hyper, because you want to save as many skills as possible to do the stagger check. And then instead of tharing, you actually want to use way plus recast. That does 40 plus 20% instead of Thar doing 50. So that's a bit of a special sidereal that is pretty much only useful for bussing. The only thing kind of hard about gate 2 is killing the hearts and then breaking the shield or whatever at 260x. If you take too long, the saws start exploding and knocking you up, and then you get like chain knocked, and then you actually time out and wipe. Pretty much the same thing with the second hard at 165. It's kind of a DPS check, but like you have 2 hypers, you should be able to do it pretty easily. The 165x stagger mechanic is very, very lenient. I'd probably just run like medium stagger here. Other than that, like you just do the raid and kill the boss. Alright, so for Brel, it's pretty much the same thing as Aegir, where I'm only going to talk about 2-man normal. I've never actually done 4-man hard, but I'm pretty sure you just need a stagger bot for gate 1 stagger check. And you also need to take a bit of extra stagger for gate 2, 335. But other than that, it's pretty much just a 4-man reclear. 3-man normal kind of shares some things with 2-man, but like it's also just like a glorified reclear. So I'm just going to talk about 2-man again. For gate 1, you're going to need time stops to resolve the mechanics, which I'll talk about later. And you'll probably want your support to have explosive expert and darks, and then the DPS will bring corrosives. So the DPS will corrosive the start, and then you want to break it as fast as possible to remove the DR. And between here and 240x, you'll be able to send Jaderica without recast, just for a little bit of extra damage. And then after 240x, you cannot get the co-op counter because it needs 3 people. So you want to use your time stop when he shoots the laser, and then we'll be able to avoid the freeze. At 180, you want to use Jaderica plus recast to break the shield as fast as possible. You take like extra freeze damage or whatever to your meter, and you want to be very ethical about your meter, because that's essentially your only like lost con, I guess, other than enraging. By the way, you want to send this as soon as the clock ticks from 57 to 56 to skip the saws and break it as soon as possible. If you send it early, sometimes it just doesn't break it and you get fucked. After the 180x shield, you might be able to send an extra Jaderico. We used to have Fernia here plus recast, but with the new scroll update where it gives like a lot more than before, you definitely don't want a Fernia anymore. Unless you get grabbed like 4 times and you need it. At the 120x stagger, again, you won't be able to resolve the stagger. So you're going to time stop after the 3rd just guard, and like basically you can do it when the stagger bar disappears. For 3-man, you might take Atros because you can actually get the co-op counter. And if you don't have time stops, you can also hyper here. For 60x, again, you want to Jaderica plus recast to break it as fast as possible. If you send an extra Jaderica, you might not have it here. Typically, it's worth holding to get at least the Jaderica first cast to break the DR early. Otherwise, you might enrage on the shield timer. After that, you might get another Jaderica to send, and you just send that to kill. One small tip is you are actually able to use the flame scroll as a cleanse for the imprison of someone getting frozen. So instead of wasting time hitting them, you just press the scroll. For 2-man gate 2, you want to run a pretty strong stagger build on your support for 335x. You want to burst stagger the 4 clones as fast as possible. So for Paladin, I use 1 blue on each. On Bard, I sound Holic 1 and 3. And on Artist, you can Tiger and counter every single one. After that, you pretty much just want to send all of your skills on the middle and beat the long stagger. On phase 2, you want to Azena plus recast as soon as possible, which means that your DPS will have to manually kill the first crystals at 100 identity. On the second one, you can Nineveh plus recast, and you definitely want to skip 3rd crystals, otherwise I'm pretty sure you just enrage based on the timer. So if it's not looking good, you should use both hypers in phase 2 to skip 3rd identity. For 145, you need one person to go front blind, and the other person should freeze because it's easier. And then you have to go stagger middle as fast as possible. Phase 3 is pretty easy. You're just trying to beat the enrage timer. It does not wipe you at enrage, so you can definitely kill it in enrage. You can Azena plus recast here, but other than that, you pretty much just kill the boss. For Mordum 4c4 or 3c5, you definitely need a pretty high stagger comp for gate 1 and then gate 2 kind of. Mostly gate 1 for the initial mirror stagger check. On support, I usually run stagger cards and like a medium stagger build because you need pretty high burst stagger actually. The long stagger is pretty easy, but because of the stagger debuff from the red lines, it's kind of hard actually. You can also run 4 whirls or 3 whirls because you do not need the damage to clear the raid. The only hard part about gate 1 is doing this stagger check. For gate 2 you can run pretty low stagger, but on support I still run some overwhelms because if you fail the 105x guard or counter, it's actually pretty tight still. We usually run 2 or 3 whirls, but again, other than the staggered, you just do the raid normally. And gate 3 is pretty much just re-clear, but with 4 people. You need to be more ethical with your counters, especially if you have back attackers. You definitely want to break the boss. So also you would want to Balthor early P1, and then usually you just Balthor at stage break after the first clash. Other than that, there's really nothing special about Mordum in general. You pretty much just hit the boss, but with less people. So yeah, if you watch the video, you probably noticed that it's not really particularly hard to bust on this game. You just need to learn how the raids work and how to play your class so you can minimize mistakes. The actual only hard part of busting is finding people to play with who aren't dog shit at the game. And if you do that, you just print infinite money. Anyway, hope you learned something. Goodbye.